Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and I'm reporting live from Shreveport, Louisiana. I am at the home of author Tracy Carnes, who's right next to me. She's in her office, and I'm actually in her living room. And we are here tonight welcoming our author, Deborah Goodrich Royce, and this is her wonderful book, Ruby Falls. But I want to introduce Tracy to the audience who may not know this, but she is my new co-host of my Pulpwood Queen Shah Rukh Khan Friends and Fan Club, Friends and Film Club. And Tracy brings a wealth of film knowledge. She's a Sundance regular. She's a screenwriter. She's a screenplay writer. And she's an author, and I've got her new manuscript I'm going to be reading. I'm really excited about. And when we start out tonight, we're going to do a little backstory on Deborah, because Deborah has quite a interesting vita on her life's work and what she's done. And I think our audience is going to be fascinated with all the incredible wealth that you bring to us from all different genres, in front of the camera, behind the camera, and now as an author. So tell us a little bit first about yourself, Deborah, and welcome. I'm going to put you on speaker view so that, so talk away and you'll be able to show up. Here we go.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Greetings in Shreveport. Please let me know when you get home if your book mail there, because I sent
will. I'm going to be
week.
home tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, for me, I've had an interesting journey. I think we all have. I'm from Detroit. My dad's from Tennessee, mom from Pennsylvania, ended up in Detroit, like many people did, you know, for the auto industry. And after college, I worked for 10 years as an actress in film and television. I started as Erica Kane's sister Silver on the soap opera My Children, and then just did a ton of nighttime TV and movies, and, you know, really had a fun decade of that. And when I had 2 children, I ended up moving behind the camera, eventually ending up as a story editor at Miramax Films, which was kind of my gradual path to writing. So that were the highlights to get me where I am today with you.
Yay. And this isn't your first book, this is your second book. And I'm an artist, so I'm in love with the cover, but your first book was Finding Mrs. Ford, and you've got a third book, which I'm seeing the cover behind you, and I think it's sitting in my mailbox when I get home, Reef Road. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll hold that up here. You can see the galley of it. Another lovely cover. Yeah, I've had good covers, and this is Ruby Falls. I'm with a small press that's distributed by Simon & Schuster, Post Hill Press, and they've just given me a lot of creative control over my covers, which has been really nice. And I have a couple of friends who are artists and graphic designers, and we've had fun working on them.
Well, they're beautiful. And I had told her when I first saw the book of Ruby Falls, I said, I don't know if you did a cardboard standee on this, but I would love to have one to frame and put in my home, because it's, you know, it's really beautiful, the artwork. And she sent me one, and I'm very excited about it. And it looks very much like this beautiful card that you sent me too. And so I have 2 things to frame. I'm so excited. But
I can actually tell the story of that cover. The artist is named Melanie Willard, and she went to Yale, got her MFA, and she was in California doing a show, I think in Pasadena, and she had all of her work on her computer, and her computer was stolen. And about 3 weeks went by, and the police finally returned this computer, but she had a lot of trouble accessing her work. And when she finally did, that was the result. Everything looked kind of broken into these lines. And if you look at it closely, you can see pieces of the young woman's face kind of broken into strips. And she liked it so much that became the basis for a show she did, which she dedicated to a thief. So
I love that.
yeah, I thought it was a great story.
Thank God she got her computer back, because does she still own the original art?
Well, I don't really know her process or how she works, or we had a robbery a month ago, May the
Where?
18th, at our house in Greenwich,
No.
Connecticut. And I opened my computer today. So I've been super busy with the lead up to this book, all the little details you all know in getting a book ready for publication. And when I opened my computer today to finally go back to work on the book I'd been working on, I saw that the last time I worked on it was 2 p.m, May the 18th. And that was the day our house was robbed while I was out to dinner. I mean, it was kind of crazy. My husband was in New York City, so we live in Greenwich, an hour outside of the city. And I came home, and I think it's going to make its way into the book, because even though I write thrillers and I have a really overactive imagination about what's going on, however, this is the fascinating thing. When I got home that night, every signal I saw that something was radically wrong in my house, I misread and gave it a completely benign interpretation. When I got to the front door, there was all this fabric on the porch. And I thought, that's funny. Did I call the painter? I don't think I called the painter. I thought it was a drop cloth. And in the end, it was my bed linens, because they had stolen an entire safe, which they crowbarred out of its to the floor, and they used the bed linens to drag it down the hall. So I get into the house, and my staircase, you have like spindles on railings, spindles in a railing, broken on the floor, like lying splinters on the floor with stair treads broken. And I called my tiny housekeeper who'd been there that day. She's tiny. She maybe weighs 100 pounds. And I asked the most idiotic question. I said, did you fall down the stairs? For her to have fallen down the stairs with that velocity, she would be dead. They would have shot her out of like a cannon. And it was then that it started dawning on me that something
Did they throw the safe through the railing or something?
We just let it go down the stairs, and the stairs turned, and it just kept going. It was 500-pound safe.
Oh, I don't even want to know what was in it, but I'm sure they'll find it. They'll find it.
They're not optimistic.
Oh,
I know.
That's the craziest thing ever. Well, thank goodness you're okay, because you were working on your book that day.
Yeah. I was just out to dinner. Well, the good thing is I didn't surprise them.
Oh, we've just been talking about how dangerous it is now. And, Shreveport is not the safest city, and all our neighbors have cameras. It's just crazy. The security, and it's a beautiful neighborhood she lives in. But yeah, I said, and she lives by herself with her pets and her dog. But
so cameras are good. I did not have cameras before. I do now.
I bet you.
I have closed that barn door after the horse got out. Good job.
Well, you wrote Mrs. Ford, and then you wrote Ruby Falls. And I just wanted to read a quick thing on the back, because Sandra Brown who is a Texas author, a New York Times bestselling Texas author, wrote, imaginative, unique, spine-tingling, and just the right amount of eerie. Ruby Falls is what a reader wants a psychological thriller to be. And is it ever? And this all comes back from, a place you used to go with your father And can you tell us, the reader who hasn't read the story, just a little bit about it without giving anything away?
Sure. Ruby Falls begins in a cave by the same name, which is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where a little 6-year-old girl, Ruby, has been taken by her father. And in this cave, they turn off the lights, and it is pitch black, and this little girl can't tell, because it's a cave, it echoes where the waterfall is. And there's a tour guide giving her speech, telling everyone, that divers have never been able to find the bottom of this cave. She, of course, is terrified, thinking she'll fall in. And when the lights come back on, her father lets go of her hand. And when the lights come back on, he's gone. And she is really frozen in a state of shock. And the tour guides at this point don't really remember who she came with. It's 1968. Speaking of cameras, there are no cameras, no cell phones, no really traceable records for who this kid came in the door with. And they don't know what to do with her. So they hold her for a while, call the police. And by 10 o'clock that night, the mother realizes that the husband and the child are not out to dinner or something. So she tracks her daughter down at the police station. 2 of them are grounded in Chattanooga, Tennessee for the rest of the summer, while the mom deals with the inquisition and search for her husband, and the child is in a state of what we would now PTSD. 20 years later, she grows up to become an actress. She changes her name. She no longer calls herself Ruby. She goes by Eleanor Russell, and she fired from the soap opera where she was starring, and takes off for Europe and meets a tall, dark, handsome stranger, marries him without knowing him. And as they're, touring Rome and are about to go in the catacombs, she has an attack of claustrophobia, understandably so, but she opts not to tell her new husband, who has, the most ridiculously dishy Gothic name, Orlando Montague. She doesn't tell him what happened to her as a child. So she begins her marriage with secret, and they end up going to LA. She's cast in a remake of Hitchcock's version of Rebecca. As she's getting absorbed in the role, Orlando starts to change, and she starts to realize that she may not be the only person in the marriage with a secret or 2 up her sleeve. So that's the setup of that book.
Yeah, who could not run out and get the book so you can read that one? I mean, it is fantastic. So all of my picks are 5 diamonds in the Pulpwood Queen tier, and that is my highest mark. And now you've got this new one coming up. And before we get to talking a little bit about it, can you tell everybody a little bit about the process of writing this book? And you've done so many different things in your life. How hard was it to go from wearing those hats to wearing the author hat?
Well, that's a great question. And it was a long journey for me. I had a good long while to get myself ready for it. So I was an actress in the 80s, early 90s. And we ended up moving to France, where my first husband had grown up. And that's where I was hired as a reader for a French film studio. Then we came back to the States, and I was hired at Miramax as the story editor. So I would say the 90s were like almost like a writing school for me, having that opportunity to edit the work of really wonderful writers. It becomes kind of a honing process where you get a clearer and clearer idea of what you think good writing is. So that took me through the 90s. And then, then it was really another 20 years or close to it before I published. So while I was raising my children, I was in writing groups. And in this writing group process, for me, it was very useful. I was involved with really kind writers. Writing groups are good with kind people, because I always felt like I was starting, it helped me understand what it was about my writing that people responded to. And I think that's a helpful exercise. These were not the kind of writing groups where people tore each other's work apart. I don't know if I could handle that. And it's not that I can't handle a tough edit, and I've had those, but this peer-to-peer thing for me worked really well with gentleness. So that was my process. And I would say it was really, I know, 2014 when my youngest child was grown and flown, and she's the child I've been most worried about. And the teenage years were very, very consuming. So when I felt she was off and doing okay, I really had this sensation of getting the real estate in my brain back. I felt like it had been colonized. And I love my children, but it was a very, very demanding period of life. And that's when, again, I'd been writing all along, but that was the moment in 2014. I said to my friends, I'm writing a book. And I felt like I was kind of coming out of the closet there, which my husband was very funny. He was like, oh, I don't know if you should be telling people you're writing a book, you might not actually finish it. And I thought, that's okay. I think for me, I needed to really declare myself. It was part of the process of committing to doing it.
Yeah, I agree with you, because once you put that out into the world, then you got to prove to everybody that you can write it. So it keeps you challenged. Good. I think that's a good point, and great for budding authors to think about, because so many authors that I've interviewed through the decades that we've been doing the Pulpwood Queens, a lot of them said they had a hard time telling people they were an author, even after they were published. But let me tell you, if you get published today, by gosh, you should tell people you're an author, because it's harder and harder every single year to get published. Yeah. There's so much competition. So good.
The first person I said, now I had told friends I was writing a book. So I had mentioned the activity I was engaged in, but the first time I said the words, I'm a writer, was I think 2018. I had sold my first book. I was traveling to England, and passport control guys like, occupation, and I said, I'm a writer. And it felt like, ooh.
That's really great. That's really great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to open it up too for discussion. We've got a lot of people here, and I'm sure they have questions for you. So raise your hand or speak up if you have a question for Deborah. I'm going to turn back to speaker view. Sarah, you want to go?
Okay, yeah. I want to compliment you. It's a really exciting, gripping novel. And I must confess that I don't want to get into any spoilers or anything, but I have to say the first part of the book with Orlando and his hair triggered touchiness and his gaslighting reminded me way too much of my former husband. And I had to put the book down for a couple of days, just like, okay, I need a breather here. It was that convincing to me. So, and the rest of it just keeps ratcheting tighter with one more twist. So excellent job. I don't really
I don't mean it this way, but I am glad to hear you say that. I had a boyfriend like that in my 20s for 4 years. I was there for 2 years. I left. I went back for 2 years. And I had a gay male friend of mine say, oh, when he read this the first time, he said, no woman would tolerate a man treating her that way. I said, I think even smart women would. And I think, and it's not gender-based at all. I think there's that thin edge of the wedge where people get into a situation, and often a person begins by being nice. Mm-hmm. And, when you're with a person like that, I think it's very clear. You remember the first time they say something off or snappish, or they ask you a really loaded question where you're being set up and it's impossible to answer it the right way. And I wanted to set the stage of her being completely destabilized
Right. Right.
it
That
that
was
way.
really smart. It was.
Wow.
Thank you. Robert, did you have something?
Well, I had an opportunity to discuss Ruby Falls with Deborah a couple of months back, and we had a lovely conversation. I love her use of language. I shared with her then one of my favorite couple of sentences. I'm just going to read them real quick to you. The women floated in on drafts of jungle gardenia and bourbon. In fairness to them, it was after 11 p.m. by that point. All scarves and heels and shirtwaists, their pumps clattered their arrival just seconds after their scent had pre-announced them. And so what I love about Deborah's writing is that it has a literary tone to it. It's character driven, but also it's plot driven. It's that perfect balance. It's beautifully written, and things happen, which is just the sort of book that I enjoy reading.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Robert, I had the opportunity to talk with the writer Emma Straub the other day, and she, of course, is at the tip top of literary fiction. And what I really like about her is what you're hitting on. She is not a snob. Sometimes you meet people in that world who really are snotty and disdainful of plot or genre. And her latest book is just beautiful literary fiction, but also about time travel. So it is in a genre. And I think sometimes we forget that we're allowed to have both, and that writers have historically had both. And it's okay to have beautiful words and sentences and have a plot that's going to keep you moving along. And of course, like your book too, Robert, you're doing the same thing. So thank you for saying that.
Any others want to speak up?
I'll say something. Are you getting reverb?
No, you're fine.
Okay. You basically have written what you know, and which is something that I do too. I just bought your book, by the way, as everything was coming on, and so I'm anxious to read it. I'm anxious to read, your interpretation of inside show business, because that's where my next book comes from too. And I love that you have written what you know. And I'm very anxious to read it. And also, I think we know somebody in common at Miramax. It's a small world.
It is a very small world, and it gets smaller and smaller. I think that's really a good point. I think for me, I spent a lot of time on plot and story, but then all the embellishments that you're talking about, like where you set it in, who the people are and the worlds they live in, and the towns and what they wear and everything, I think that does, I think, have to come from what I know. Like I'm working on something now, and I was really knocking my head against the wall for where to set it. And it just came to me recently. I'm going to set it in Greenwich. I live in Greenwich. I haven't written anything there. And the whole thing just started flowing. Not so much with the story, but this idea of, I know exactly. And because of this robbery, I have now my heroine at the very beginning going out that front door. I'm describing exactly how the porch is, exactly how the driveway is. That is going to be meaningful at some point. It's what you said, if you know it, it just flows.
It's authentic to me.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of book that I really love, when somebody, is writing about a world that they know. It's just more authentic, and I cannot wait to read it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, these are all aspects of your writing. Your books are all standalones. I haven't read the third one, but I want to hear more about Reef Road. It's finished now. The books are just now going out. What's the pub date?
January 10th, 2023. right before
Okay.
girlfriend weekend.
Right
Yeah.
before girlfriend weekend, fantastic.
And the publisher picked it because the book is primarily set in Florida. And it is a story that I wrote essentially in the pandemic lockdown in spring of 2020. When the world came to a halt, I began researching a true story that has had a major impact on my family. On December the 10th, 1948, my mother's best friend was brutally murdered in her home in Pittsburgh. My mother and she had been at the Lutheran church late that Friday afternoon, rehearsing for the Christmas pageant. They had gone home separately. My mother was invited to go to her house that night. The girls' parents were going out bowling, and my grandmother said no. And the next morning, my mother was sent to the bakery. She was only 12, but that's how it was in 1948. You would easily send a 12-year-old to a bakery. And when my mom got there, she heard people talking in low voices. And it took her a while to really make out what they were saying. And she blurted out, "That's my best friend." And a reporter latched onto my mother and drove her home and asked her a lot of questions, which my grandmother put the finish to that. But this crime that happened has remained unsolved, and it has had this outsized influence on my mother, and in many ways, me. And what I really wanted to explore, more than the details of the actual crime, was this phenomenon that happens, which is a very real syndrome. One term for it is survivor's guilt. Another term for it is generational trauma. I don't know if there's an exact word for what I mean, but I'm thinking of Dominic Dunn. And, after the murder of his own daughter, he became really obsessively interested in chronicling murder trials. Or Michelle McNamara wrote I'll Be Gone in the Dark, about the Golden State Killer. She had a neighbor girl murdered in her town in Illinois. And I think, so this idea that a single act of violence doesn't stop at the moment or the victim, it has a ripple effect on other people. So Reef Road, it's a dual narrative, two women in Palm Beach, in Florida, in this oppressive heat and humidity of the lockdown, with the crazy claustrophobia of all of it. And one of them is a writer who's researching the murder of her mother's best friend. And the other is a younger woman who's married to a very handsome fellow from Argentina, who is last seen getting on a plane for Buenos Aires several weeks into this quarantine lockdown with their two children in their face masks. She's unable to follow because she's an American citizen, and they've closed the borders to foreigners. And so you start to kind of unspool how the lives of these two women connect. And that's Reef Road.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Is there any, I know you've got the birds of paradise on there. Is there any, other than that being a tropical flower, is there any other, reference that calls to that in the book?
Well, there's the spider. Along came a spider and stung the spider. Can you see the spider?
Oh,
I see it.
So let me tell you, we worked very hard getting that spider right, because there are arachnophobes who won't touch the book if the spider's too gross. So we really made it more like a silhouette of a spider. So there it's visible. You're not looking at, the details of an actual spider. And the spider is significant, sort of metaphorically, and there is a moment in the plot. Yeah, I wanted to get that hot house feeling. I was in Florida, and it just felt hotter than normal and buggier than normal. And there was nobody there, and I would ride my bike around, and it was so odd. I felt like a 12-year-old after school. with nobody around. And that Reef Road is a street in Palm Beach on the north end, and it's a famous surfing beach. It begins on the surfing beach, Reef Road, where two teenage boys sneak out of the house to go surfing while their mother's at the grocery store. And, you know, there are police do not enter tapes on the beach, which there were then. Beaches were closed. As they're kind of trying to walk over the hot sand, they see all these seagulls hovering around something, and it turns to be a human hand. And one of the most fun parts of the prologue was getting my surfer speech correct and my surfer body language correct. I am hoisting the surfboards on their head, and my son-in-law said, no, under the arm. I'm like, okay. So, you know, and I had to go on a competition. Do surfers say bro or bra? Some say bra, some say bro. I stuck with bro, but that was a lot of fun because the moment they're brothers, where they fin his hand and one of the brothers says to the other, dude, do you think it's real? And the other brother says, the seagulls do.
Oh,
Oh, man.
oh, that's a good line. Oh,
love that.
movie. I see this as a movie. Now, with your film background and everything, do you write? Do you physically see it as a movie playing in your head? Because almost every book I read, I see it as a film. I mean, it's a visually playing out. And does that happen to you?
I always do. And when I first started writing novels, I had to work very hard to get out of that, you know, the view of the camera, and to really, because in a thriller, generally speaking, you're encouraged to stay ahead of the protagonist and not see around corners that he or she can't see around. Whereas, of course, in a film, you know, you're getting a completely different perspective. And I try to adhere to that. At the beginning of Finding Mrs. Ford, there's a moment where Mrs. Ford, in this beautiful seaside resort community, sets off to walk her dogs, and a car that she's early noticed starts the engine and starts to follow her through the town. So rather than make it so cinematic that she doesn't see the car at all, I sort of mention that she barely notices. So I do try to adhere to that, but I see everything visually. Yeah, I'm really a word person, but yeah, I see it. I think most writers do.
I even see things in color. I mean, I dream in color. I really see, I love black and white films, but when I dream and see books, I don't see a black and white. I see the color, and this sounds like a very colorful book. So The Birds of Paradise is, I want to examine that cover. I can't wait to get home and to find it. Hopefully it's in my mailbox when I get there. So that's going to come out just before Girlfriend Weekend. And then you're going to be hitting the road for another book tour. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to start really the weekend right before pub date on Tuesday, January 10th.
Wow.
It's all getting really geared up. We're going to try to do a lot in Florida since it's a Florida book. And I just think, I think people are reading about places they know. Speaking of movies, a feeling of this book is comparable. Remember Body Heat with Kathleen?
Oh my
Burnett?
gosh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of my
That was
favorite
Lantana. Yeah. And that movie, I mean, I think it was set pre-air conditioning. They were all so sweaty and hot. Just love that film. I saw it again while I was writing this book.
I've got to watch it again. I haven't seen it in years, but I remember.
holds up.
Oh, I remember it was steamy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely
Wow.
holds up. The story's good. The acting's great. It's worth seeing again.
Well, everybody listen to that. You'll have to watch it. But you've got 3 books out there and we need to read them all. But Ruby Falls was our pick. and it's exceptional. And you can find it on our website at thepulpwoodqueens.com, on our bookshop, which benefits independent bookstores. And I understand, I was talking to Donna Paz Kirkland, who is providing our books for Girlfriend Weekend 2023. You're going to be doing an event with her, and she told me it was going to be on Monday. Is it going to be on Monday? After
No,
Girlfriend
it's going to be on Thursday, right before, because she has another event the following weekend and she didn't want two in the same week. So if anybody's in the Amelia Island region, it's the day before Girlfriend Weekend gets going.
Okay. Well, I just talked to her and she said, no, we're going to move it on Monday. So I
You
go,
did?
well, we'll find out when we talk to Deborah.
Okay.
But whenever, it's going to be great. We're excited. Everybody's coming to Girlfriend Weekend. They're signing up, and I'm encouraging everybody to do so quickly, because we are filling up fast, because we had so many rollovers from the 2020 event postponed till the next live event. So they're all coming and more, and our price is going up August the 1st. So you want to get your packages now and book your rooms now. And if you come early and stay late, you have to call there's a special link to talk to about, because you can get the same room rates, which is, because I'm going in, I'll be in Thursday night and I'll be leaving Monday. So I'm really excited about the weekend, and everybody, we're posting now all the keynote authors, and then now we're working on panels and moderators, and just got River Jordan up as our first moderator, and we've got Adriana Trigiani, Will Clark. Let's see, I'm trying to think who else's picture I posted right away. They're up on our Facebook pages, and when we get it all finished, it'll be up on our website. So excited you're going to be there, and excited. I think everybody here is going, right?
Yep.
Raise your hand if you're going.
Yeah.
Yay, all my friends are going to be there.
I have a question, Kathy. Can I have Deborah, I saw the title of your book. I didn't realize it was 5 years ago that it was published. And I was just so intrigued by the title and the cover, and I never got to read it. So today I went looking at it some more when I saw that you'd be on tonight. And I saw that it is also an audiobook. And I have a question for you about the audiobook, because as an actress, how did you choose your narrator? How did that play into telling your story? And, I'm thinking of doing it as an audiobook, or maybe I'll read it. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely interested. The title, I just love the title, Ruby Falls. It just tells you, like, what happened to Ruby? Is it the name of a place? Is it what happened to this person? It's just such a title that pulls you in. So good,
Yeah,
good
and
choice.
of course it's both. So with each of my books, they've been the audio has been published by Blackstone, and I've had the chance to identify some voices that I've liked. I didn't ever want to read my books myself. I think, some of you, like Kathy, you're a painter as well as being a writer. I think create something, you're really giving it out there. And I wanted to hear what someone else did with it. And also, people are always asking me if my book's autobiographical. So I felt like I better not read them myself. So with Finding Mrs. Ford, I want kind of a very sultry, husky voice. And we ended up with Saskia Marleveld. And with Ruby Falls, I wanted a much younger, more innocent, and very tentative voice. And we ended up with Stephanie Wills. And each of those actresses are absolutely outstanding for the book that shed for. And now I'm in the process of listening to voice for Road. And there's so many outstanding voices out there. So you really have to kind of listen for the feel you want. And their voices sound like they're different ages. different types of delivery. Anyway, the first two books, I've loved each of the actors who did it.
Mhm.
So do you have a suggestion? Should I listen or should I read it?
Gosh. Do you like audiobooks? It's awfully good on audio.
I like audiobooks for when I'm driving to, I usually that's when I,
Yeah, that's what I do too.
that's what
So
I,
it's
that's,
simple.
so that's what I was thinking of
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy it. I'm very pleased with the actresses.
Great, great. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yes, Sarah.
Oh, yeah, I'll just add in regard to audio books, if you have a choice, Eileen, do be picky, because on my first audiobooks were just the narrators were chosen for me by the Audible, because our publisher made it kind of a group deal. And I got the most inappropriate person to, my characters is kind of kick butt gals and this breathy voice. And I can't listen to it. I mean, I don't even want to recommend it. So yeah, be sure you get that right match. And I'm so glad, Deborah, that you did.
That's really rough. I'd be very upset by that. I can understand why you wouldn't want to recommend, because it's so important. Wow. Yeah.
Your voice is very important. So you better love the person who's reading your book, or, you better be, and it would be hard to read a book, because just try reading a page and try not to make a mistake. I was reading to Tracy earlier tonight. She goes, "Oh, but you need to have more of a Southern accent." I go, "I'm not Southern. I'm from Kansas, So I've lived in California and now in Texas. So I think I would have somebody else read my book, because but I'd sure want to pick it. So good questions. Great. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure, Deborah, to hear more about your books. I am in love with them, and I can't wait to read Reef Road. This is exciting. Another Florida book. All the more reason to come to Florida. And I just want to also announce too that this week we are having our Writers Club on Saturday with Alice C. Early. So she brought a very unique perspective to her week of being featured as an international book club pick. So we invited her to our Writers Club mentors to our budding writers and our seasoned professionals. So if you would like sometime when it's not so crazy to do one on your perspective, we would love to have you, Deborah, because it's so important because every single author that we have, I always learn something. And I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. Any other announcements we need to know, or places you're going to be between now and Girlfriend Weekend?
For me, yeah. I mean, so in the summer, I have this really incredible author series in Rhode Island at the Ocean House Hotel. If anybody's up in New England, Wednesdays at 5 p.m., come on by.
Well, post it on the official International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys, because you can post any of your events, I'll approve them, or you can get it to me somehow. And it's really easy to post them that way if you just post them and then I approve them. We want all our authors, if you have any breaking news or if you're going to be somewhere. I miss a lot, and right now I'm getting ready for surgery, so I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done, and I'm going to be a little bit off the computer. Mandy's there. She's working hard on our 2 books. So if you be sure and read our July issue of Reading Nation magazine, because she's got how you submit to our 2 new books, In the Kitchen with the Pulpwood Queens and our Work in Progress. If you weren't in the first book, if you want to submit a story, Mandy Haynes is going to have those out by Girlfriend Weekend. And she has got all these other jobs too. So I can't thank her enough, and everybody on my dream team like Robert and now Tracy and all of you for your tremendous support. Tell everybody, get your tickets, because I know soon I'm going to be going, we're sold out. Whereas there's only so many we can get in the convention center. So if you have any questions about anything, email me at thepulpwoodqueen@gmail.com. I will be glad to answer them, and give Mandy a little break. She just got the July issue out. She did an outstanding job. I love the coverage for you, Deborah. She got the back cover and great stories and all the features. And of course, Suzanne Kamada is on the cover, and we love her. She always is usually here from Japan, but I think she's got a class or doing something on this night. So thank you for joining us. And again, it's always about the story. Keep me posted on everything you're doing. And thank you, Deborah. Have a wonderful post 4th of July week. And we look forward to, I'll let you know as soon as I get home if I got Reef Road. But I'm going to tell you, I may have to start a wallpaper of all your book covers. They're so beautiful. And
They're gorgeous.
They really are. You're doing an outstanding job, and I'm so pleased for you. And I want to know more about what you're doing up at the Ocean House. So I'll look forward to that post. So
Good luck with everything. Good luck with your surgery.
Oh, I'm feeling very good.
On all that. Yeah, thinking of you with that.
Thank you so much. And everybody have a great summer. Let's get to reading. Ruby Falls, you all. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.